Got another great show planned for you here today on Locked On Blue Devils. We love talking Duke men's basketball recruiting. We do it each and every week with our very good friend Jason Jordan, the director of college basketball recruiting for Sports Illustrated. Let's talk about the Duke Blue Devils. We'll take a look back at some of the top recruiting stories over the last decade or so. That's coming up here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils. Let's get to it.
You are Locked On Blue Devils, your daily podcast on the Duke Blue Devils, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody, and welcome into another episode of the Locked On Blue Devils podcast. My name is JJ Jackson. It's so great to have you here with us on the show today. We've got a lot to discuss on the program, as here at Locked On Blue Devils, a daily podcast devoted to everything going on in the life of Duke athletics. Each and every week, we have the awesome opportunity to chat with Jason Jordan, the director of college basketball recruiting. We're going to do another look back, a recruiting look back for a couple of Duke stars over the past decade. If you missed our conversation last week, we broke down the news. Darren Harris is the newest class of 2024 commit for Duke men's basketball. And then we revisited that guy by the name of Kyrie Irving. What an amazing Duke basketball player he was. What a great high school player. So we're moving forward with a couple of guys here on today's show. If you haven't done so, please subscribe to Locked On Blue Devils for free on YouTube. Also support us with whatever podcast platform you listen to podcasts. If you're on the Apple Podcast platform, we'd absolutely love a 5-star rating and written review. As we get set to welcome in our pal Jason Jordan, the director of recruiting for college basketball for Sports Illustrated, and also a good partner of ours here with Locked On. We want to let you know that all of our conversations are brought to you by our friends at LinkedIn. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions apply. Jason, it's great to have you back on the program with us. We look at the calendar, and all of a sudden, it's turned to November, and basketball is finally here collegiately. What a good time of year it is, my friend.
Oh, absolutely, man. Always fun this time of the year. Everybody knows that they're going to win the national title, whether that's delusional or not. Probably not for you guys, but, I've heard from a lot of fan bases that know, air quotes, know this is their year. So always fun. That's always fun.
It's a point where we're like counting down the hours at this point until we get to see Duke basketball out there on the floor. This is our Wednesday, November 2nd episode of Locked On Blue Devils. So tonight, Duke's got an exhibition game against Fayetteville State. And then on Monday, the season gets off and rolling. So big-time basketball coming there to Durham. And to have big-time basketball, you need big-time players. And so it's always fun when there's not as much recruiting happening right now, big-time commitments or that sort of thing, to look back, because Duke is such a program that's had quite an amazing group of players come through Durham over the last decade or so.
Absolutely, man. Best of the best. Shire getting these 2 number 1 classes, that's nothing new. You guys have always reeled in the best talent. And so, that's part of the reason people hate you. They hate you because you're getting the top prospects. So, definitely nothing new. It's just the norm, continuation of the norm there in Durham.
Well, let's get to it then, man. I want to take a look back. I want to go back. We talked Kyrie Irving last week. Today, I want to go back to the next kind of big name that really made way on campus. You take a look at Austin Rivers, his commitment there for Duke. What do you remember from Austin Rivers' high school days? So we mentioned him a little bit last week because he told some New Jersey camp stories from a Deron Williams camp where he first saw Kyrie Irving. So Austin Rivers was big on the basketball scene even before he went on to Duke and went on to his NBA career.
One of the biggest, I have to tell this story. I was pretty connected with Austin in high school. I think he kept a blog for me. It's been so long. I think he kept a blog for me. He was one of my bloggers. But I used to talk to him all the time. But he was like a larger than life because of his dad too. He got a lot of most people know that his dad is Doc Rivers. So he, and he was a bad man. Like Austin was like in the Hoop mixtape era. He was around the beginning of that, in the first few years, I would say,
Right.
of that era. And his mixtape was like one of the top mixtapes ever viewed. Like it was insane. And he always put on a show. And his following was huge. Like I think he might have been the first like rock star type following at games and tournaments and stuff like that. It would be like a line of 100 people after games waiting to take pictures and get autographs and stuff like that. And, Austin was definitely like a celebrity, and he carried himself that way. Very cocky player on the court. Good dude. Most people didn't get to know him to that degree, but I got to know him pretty well. And good guy, great guy to talk to. But on the court, and he would admit it, like he had like a Kobe persona on the court. Very, very confident. Always felt like he was the best player on the court. And he was always fun to watch because the gym was always packed. And he was must-see TV, and he always put on a show. He rarely let you down when he touched the court.
In a lot of ways, I guess that makes sense. I mean, we don't really need to connect the dots at this point for Duke fans. They are aware of the fact that his dad is Doc Rivers, right? That he's an NBA head coach and has been for pretty much Austin's entire life. It feels like that Austin grew up in NBA locker rooms around the best of the best at all times. In some weird way, it kind of does make sense that you would have so much confidence, so much bravado, because man, I was just in a locker room last night with Paul Pierce, Kevin Garnett, Ray, all these stars of the Boston, and then you're going out and playing on the high school basketball floor, and you're Austin Rivers.
Absolutely, man. But it's funny. His brother was before him. His brother was a pretty good prospect too, but his brother wasn't like. He just was different, man. Austin was, I guess he's not the baby of the family, but the middle kid, and so. He just had it. He had the it factor, and he, like I said, rarely disappointed when you came to see him. He was box office.
Austin Rivers, taking a look back at his awesome recruitment, ended up wearing that Duke uniform. We, of course, remember his amazing shot that he had in the Dean Dome against North Carolina. We'll talk about that and a little bit more about his recruitment in particular after our first time out here today on Locked On Blue Devils. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. Go ahead and add your job in the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience, so you could quickly prioritize who you would like to interview and hire. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. As we move forward here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils, I'm JJ Jackson, joined by my buddy Jason Jordan. Double J's for both of us as we're breaking down the Duke basketball recruiting world, taking a look back at Austin Rivers in particular. What do you remember from his recruitment specifically, Jason? I mean, did it feel like Duke was the no-brainer selection? You've got Coach K, who's known Doc Rivers from coaching days and yada, yada. Did it feel like it was always going to be Duke, or what do you remember from that recruitment in particular?
I remember Florida giving them a strong push. Obviously he lived there in Florida at Winter Park High School. And I remember Florida being a really strong contender to land him. And there was a lot of pressure for him to stay there in state and play for the Gators. I know he was very, very high on them. But I would say they were the biggest contender. But I think Duke was always had an edge, even a slight edge, but they always had an edge. And, in the end, I think he wanted to, keep things going because, Duke was just coming off Kyrie and, a lot of people were like, oh, what if Kyrie stayed? Look at the backcourt. I remember that. He was like, man, that'd be great. I would love to play with Kyrie. I remember he said that. He said, I don't think I'll get a chance to, but I would love to play with Kyrie. But I mean, imagine that backcourt in college. Geez. But yeah, I think Duke was always, that I can remember, Duke was always always had the edge. And I felt like they always felt like they were in the driver's seat, the staff did.
I remember it. And so there's the commitment to Duke, and then Austin Rivers gets set for his freshman year. And so many people already, like you said, it's the year after Kyrie Irving was a one-and-done star for Duke. And so immediately in the back of your mind, you're hoping that this doesn't necessarily become the big trend that it is to this day, because you want to see these guys play for Duke for so long. But I remember he first arrives on campus, and Duke fans, like any great college fan base, are so obsessed, Jason, with what jersey number these guys want to wear, among a variety of different things. And no one had wore number 0 before at Duke until Austin Rivers entered the building. I believe Sub-Zero was the nickname that he had at the time. And so all of a sudden, someone at Duke was given permission to wear the jersey number 0, and it was Austin Rivers who stepped up to the plate.
Yeah, that's all, and such an Austin thing to do. You know him, you understand what I'm saying. Like, that's such an Austin thing. He's always thinking about stuff like that. I remember he used to say this thing, man on a mission. Like,
yes.
But I remember having the conversation with, this is how far we go back. I remember having the conversation with him, and I said, you always, that's your thing. I said, man, you should really trademark that. And he was like, yeah, you know what, I should. And I think he did. I gave him the idea, but I remember that it really like hit him, like, yeah, you know what, I think I should do that. And I think he even has that tattoo, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
So yeah, that's the Austin thing. I mean, he was the marketing extraordinaire before it was popular to be marketing extraordinaire.
Sub-Zero, man. He wanted to be so cold and definitely be a killer out there on the hardwood. And it comes to his Duke career, and what a fun player he was. He's got amazing moments, but of course, all of them don't quite live up to the shot that he had in the Dean Smith Center, as Duke was able to walk away with a major comeback. What do you remember about that game? What do you remember about that shot? Just take me back to Jason Jordan at that moment in time. What do you remember?
Yeah, so I remember when was it Tyler Zeller that missed the free throw?
Yes.
And then he shot it over Tyler, right?
Right.
Yeah. So when he missed the free throw and Austin got the ball, I knew Austin was never going to pass that ball. He was never. When I tell you never, he was never going to pass that ball. So I knew he was going to launch it. And when I saw that, I didn't know who he would launch it over.
Right.
So when I saw that it was going to be Tyler Zeller, I said, I think he's going to fry him. He's going to hit him with like a quick jab, and he's definitely going to get it off, because that's just Austin Rivers. I'm not going to say I knew he was going to make it. I mean, my goodness, who knows when history is about to be made. But man, cold as ice, Duke legend forever from your guys' eyes, I'm sure, for that shot. And I'll tell you something funny. After that, for at least 3 years after that, when kids would go, I would talk to recruits that went to the Dean Dome for like a Carolina visits, and officials, and they would be.
I know where you're going.
Yeah.
Oh man.
I would say, hey, they play pickup, and they'd be like, yeah, I did the Austin. I did that Austin. I reenacted the Austin shot. I said, was the team in there? And a couple times they were like, yeah, but they would tell me. I mean, I don't know if this is true, but they would tell me the team would do it. True story. I won't say who told me that, but I do remember. But it was a couple kids,
right?
At least 5, to be very honest with you, that said that they reenacted the infamous Austin Rivers shot. And I'm talking 5-star kids.
At this point, if you don't have that shot in your highlight video for Duke basketball or anything, what are you doing at this point? Because again, what an amazing game it was. That game was so. Duke comes back a double-digit deficit late in the second half. Tyler Zeller also at one point in that game, Jason, was going up for a rebound and deflected it back into Duke's basket, giving 2 points to Duke.
I remember that.
Seth Curry made a couple of big shots down the stretch. And that's the other thing. Austin does this wave into the corner like, I've got this. I'm going to ISO this final shot. And that's Seth Curry in the corner right here. And over on this other wing is Andre Dawkins. Like, they're really prolific three-point shooters for Duke. But Austin knew it was going to be him the whole time.
That's what I'm saying. Kobe mentality, the Mamba mentality, man. He really adopted that thing, man. You can tell Austin he was not the best player on the court every time he stepped on the court, no matter what. Even to this day, he's like that.
Yeah. And then flashing the Duke logo. I mean, up afterwards in the Dean Smith Center. What an awesome moment it was. Unfortunately, that the story continues for Duke basketball. And this is going to be a bad trend on today's episode. But Lehigh is who Duke is matched up with in the NCAA tournament. And so, again, going back to at the start of the year, here's this guy. He's going by Sub-Zero. We've got this feeling in the back of our mind that this one-and-done trend is going to be a thing for Duke. I don't think no one realized that the last game we would see him wear that Duke jersey would be against Lehigh, which at the time – I think most people are thinking, where in the world is this school? What is this school? And there they go, ending Duke's season in the big dance.
Yeah. He didn't have a good game that game either. Oh, man, what is my man's name that really cooked Duke for 30 that game? And he's in the NBA now.
CJ McCollum,
Yeah, CJ, I'm tripping. Yeah, CJ, and I'm pretty sure he had 30 in that game.
He did. He absolutely did.
You know, we see the careers that, you know, they're parallel their careers, and you know that's interesting too. But you know, because Austin came in with all that hype and different stuff like that. But yeah, that to your point, I mean, that's he hits the big shot, but then that's something that people, I live on Tobacco Road. I live in Raleigh, so I see Duke and Carolina people go at it all the time during the season. I definitely hear the Lehigh reference, even to this day.
Always,
yeah.
Never
and then
gonna go away.
Duke fans will counter with Weber State, so it's always fun. They go back and forth, man.
And that's what good rivalries are for. That's for sure. So, all right, we've got one more break and another recruiting look back on the other side of this here on Locked On Blue Devils. Locked On Blue Devils here today is brought to you by our friends over at BetOnline. BetOnline is your number one source for football betting and the start of the new basketball season. Find all the latest player developments, team matchups, news podcasts, and in-depth analysis on every game. And as always, BetOnline remains your continued source for all your sports wagering information with live betting and up-to-the-minute scores for every sport out there. The fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite games and events, including Major League Baseball, MMA, boxing, and golf. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. Welcome back into today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils. I'm JJ Jackson alongside my buddy Jason Jordan, the director of college basketball recruiting for Sports Illustrated. A recruiting look back. We talked about our good pal Austin Rivers, his one amazing season playing basketball for Duke. Off to the NBA he goes, and Austin Rivers still continuing that professional basketball career to this day. 2 years later, another top recruit by the name of Jabari Parker is in the Chicago area. We obviously know with Austin Rivers, he's got the NBA dad. He's a name that we've known for quite some time. Looking back, Jason, like how long was Jabari Parker on the basketball scene before he became a senior in Jabari Parker, who's headed to play for Duke? What do you remember?
So Jabari's recruitment. I mean, I remember BYU because he's Mormon. So I remember that being a really big thing. Like
I forgot about that. Yeah.
Is he gonna do? I mean, that was big. Like people were like, "No, he's going to BYU." It's a fact, right? So but you know what else I remember? I remember he told me that Duke was his worst visit.
Wow.
And I believe it was because he said something like, they were what did he say? They were too business-like or something like that, and he just wanted to have fun and kick it a little bit. And they were I think they were like too business-oriented. But he specifically said, I think this is out there. I'm pretty sure I wrote about it.
Yeah.
Other couple people wrote about it because he was very open about it.
Right.
Especially after he picked them. I mean, he probably wouldn't have said that. in the process. But yeah, he said and I distinctly remember he said he called Kay and to tell him, and Kay was like, "Oh, congratulations." Congratulations for picking us, and so yeah, but Jabari was larger than life too. Like, he was like the heir apparent. And you'll have one of those in every class, but he was different because of his size. He's coming from Chicago, and I remember the McDonald's All-American. It was like the highest attended McDonald's All-American game ever to that point, because it was right there in Chicago. And yeah, it was there was a lot of hoopla, but by that time he was committed. But there was a lot of hoopla around him, and that was but I remember the BYU thing specifically, because everybody was like, I don't know if he's gonna go, but then it was like back channels, it was like, nah, he really, that they're a real contender, like in real life, real contender. But I felt like Duke was, again, Duke was always strong there. Michigan State was a big player in that one too, I remember, if I remember correctly. And yeah, in the end, you guys won out. But that was one of the that was one of the biggest ones, because Jabari's his personality is very much introverted, so he didn't disclose a lot, and just because that's just who he was,
Right.
But so there wasn't a lot of intel floating around about that. But
Yeah.
But yeah,
So-
he definitely.
Tell me a little bit more. I mean, obviously, I ask when he comes into the scene and that sort of thing. And being from the Chicago area, and again, it's a McDonald's All-American game that's set to be played in Chicago. Chicago in recent seasons, to go back to that moment in time, right? You've got Derrick Rose, you've got Anthony Davis, you've got these big-time players who came out of that area, and Chicago has always had a great level of basketball. What can you say about that Chicago level of play, and just for Jabari to emerge out of every big player that comes out of that area?
Yeah, well, that's a super hotbed, Derek. Like you said, you named them. But at that time, it was even, it was their time. For over the last a 5-year span, they were reeling them off. Then they had Jahlil Okafor right after him. So yeah, he was, I mean, people were saying he was the best ever in Chicago and things like that. Obviously I don't think that was true, but I mean, hey, bad man, don't get me wrong. But when you talking about the best of a bunch of great players, but yeah, he was at his time, he was definitely getting that next big thing hype. And people were calling him better than Derrick Rose. He was in documentaries for Benji, the kid that was killed in the 80s. And yeah, he was big. Like he was a rock star too. Jabari was definitely a rock star. He just didn't have the rock, like Austin was a rock star and he acted like one.
Yeah.
Jabari wasn't like that.
So Jabari Parker comes to play for Duke. That season, Duke also has one of their first key transfers that you don't really see transfers come in and make an impact for Duke basketball. That wasn't necessarily Coach K's go-to ingredient, but Rodney Hood is a part of the team to play there with Jabari Parker. And the season starts, as it does many years, and as it will this season for Duke, with the Champions Classic, the event each year that features Duke, Kansas, Kentucky, and Michigan State. All those schools rotate, playing one another. And for Duke, much like this year, Duke's going to play Kansas on November 15th. In 2013, they took on Kansas, and we had Andrew Wiggins versus Jabari Parker, which became such a big debate back and forth at that time. What do you remember from those days, those matchups in particular? Every time you said Jabari Parker, it felt like you needed to say Andrew Wiggins' name as well, and vice versa.
Yeah, I mean, they went back and forth, a lot. Even I remember in that class, I believe Julius Randle was in that class too. And so it was those three, right? But to your point, it was always because they were so similar. They stature wise, they were exactly the same. So, but yeah, I know they went back and forth. I think Andrew may, it depends on the rankings. Andrew may have ended up the number one player in that class. but yeah, like I say those two never really bought into that.
Right.
Both of them are very much introverted, very quiet. But Jabari would always kind of deflect that. He that's just not his personality. Like he would just more of a humble kid. Just he was like a head down and work type kid. He wasn't with the side hoopla stuff. He was never like that.
What impressed you most about Jabari's game on the floor? We've talked a lot about the recruitment, being from the Chicago area and that sort of thing. But looking back to his high school days and the one season at Duke, huge frame. What really stood out to you about Jabari?
Just his versatility at his size. I mean, he's 6'8", 6'9", but he played like a guard, and he, how hard he worked, and all the boxes he checked off on both ends of the floor. And he played with a lot of passion. Like I said, he was introverted off the court, but on the court, he was very much a leader. And very much a high IQ guy. And he knew what to do in given situations. Like he always made the right basketball play. And that was one of the things that really, and that's what most people loved about him. He knew when to call his number, and that spoke a lot to his maturity at a very young age. But if you were ever around him, it would make sense that he would be that mature. Because that's just how he was.
Taking a look at Jabari Parker, a recruiting look back here with my good pal Jason Jordan from Sports Illustrated in the Duke story as well. When you talk about Jabari Parker's time there on campus, he's got not one, but two Sports Illustrated covers. Jason, he's got one in his Simeon swag there. The best high school player since LeBron James is Jabari Parker. And a profile from Jeff Benedict. And then there's another cover with Jabari in Duke practice gear next to Coach K, the education of Jabari Parker. Yeah. So he had a couple of cover opportunities there in Durham.
Yeah, man. But, it's just kind of like if people, you look back now and you're like, I mean, was it worth it? Did he pan out and stuff like that? He had a good career. I think he averaged like 19 at Duke. So, yeah, of course he was worth it. And then, that's what it was at the time. You have to look at, you can't take a sample size of what was it at the time. And at the time, I felt like that was certainly warranted. He definitely called for that level of hype because that's what it was at the time. He was larger than life. His following was, his game was, and, that's the kind of treatment that stars get.
And then to wrap up our conversation here today, we said it'd be a theme, unfortunately, for Duke fans, but with both Austin Rivers and Jabari Parker, their Duke careers end with first-round exits. All of a sudden, we had the Lehigh game take place that ended the career of Austin Rivers. Jabari Parker and Rodney Hood go to the NCAA tournament, Jason, and they are upset by Mercer in the first round, a one-and-done exit for Duke that year.
Yeah. I'll tell you what I remember the most about that is my man hitting a nay after the game. I mean, that was yeah. So I definitely hear Mercer too. With the go back and forth with the definitely was that was a first round, wasn't it?
Yep. Both of them. Yeah.
Yeah. So because I was mad because everybody wanted to see Jabari, in the Elite Eight and Final Four,
sure.
And see him rise to the occasion and different things like that. But that's how it goes, man. That's why we love March. And he didn't have a great game that game either. I don't remember his stat line, but I remember it being not a great game for him.
Funny, Austin Rivers and Jabari Parker don't have big games in the NCAA tournament. Duke, I mean, hey, maybe
go figure.
We can connect the dots. Yeah, go figure.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, but he had a great freshman year. I think he was overshadowed by that, and people were mad about that. But great freshman year. Definitely a great freshman year.
And then on to the NBA draft, a top 3 pick for Jabari Parker, always, again, attached to Andrew Wiggins' name. And here we are all these years later, looking back at what was for Austin Rivers and Jabari Parker. Jason, as always, it's fun to have you on the show. A little bit of a different speed today in our conversation, but these recruiting look backs are so much fun for Duke fans. So thank you again for the time and doing this conversation today.
No problem, man. Look forward to the next one.
All right. That's our good pal, Jason Jordan from Sports Illustrated, joining us here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils. So much fun, as always, to chat with him on the program. Please be sure to support his work. All right, subscribe to Locked On Blue Devils on YouTube. Also find our podcast platform wherever you can, as that's going to do it for another amazing episode of Locked On Blue Devils here today As always, go Duke. I'll talk to you tomorrow. My name is JJ Jackson. Thank you and good day.